Alex, next week we're gonna have to see each other in person.
Oh God, we are, aren't we? Ugh.
Yeah, PAX East is next week.
I had not even considered that until you just mentioned it, and ugh.
I know, I know. I can't tell what's more terrifying, having to see you in person or the fact that I have to give like a 20, 25-minute talk and I haven't started writing it yet.
I would say the talk is probably more terrifying because I mean the worst thing I'm going to do is walk up and give you a noogie, getting in front
Yeah.
of a bunch of people and having to talk stuff. You know, you got to be good for that. That actually
Mm,
requires effort.
damn. I guess I should have thought about that. Well, I guess
Yeah.
I guess I'm not gonna have a weekend.
No, no, I suppose not. But you know, if nothing else, you at least have an idea of what you're going to do, right?
Yeah, it should. I should be okay.
I think you'll
I
be
just
fine.
I this damn three story took up my entire week.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be not what I was working on, and then that happened. So we'll get to
Yeah.
that. We'll talk about that in news. But what did you just play more Infamous 2 this week?
No, I did not. In fact, I actually played no Infamous 2 at all this week.
Or Infamous 3, Infamous Second Son.
3,
Sorry.
yeah. I played no Infamous whatsoever of any kind
You could
this
have
week.
said that you played no Infamous 2, and you would have that also would have been accurate.
Yeah, any Infamous, pick an Infamous. I did not play it this week. Instead, let's see what came up this week. Well, there will be an episode of the Power Bombcast going up later today that we recorded on Wednesday. WrestleMania is this coming weekend, so we got that going. As far as games I actually spent time playing, there were a couple of things. One, which came out yesterday, was I tried out Rusty's Real Deal Baseball for the 3DS.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, so, okay, what do you know about this game, Patrick?
I remember the Nintendo Direct, and I remember what was interesting about it was that you could haggle to unlock the additional mini games.
Right. So, yes, it is a free-to-play game. You download it. It gives you a demo for one of the baseball-themed mini games that it comes with. It has several that you can purchase a la carte using real money. And the way you acquire these is to, like you said, haggle with the titular character, Rusty, whose last name I can't remember offhand, who is a dog, who is a 56-year-old former baseball player dog.
We
Who is a little
know for
down on his
sure that
luck.
he's 56.
They specifically mention that.
Okay.
And it's not just a matter of kind of wheeling and dealing to try and get a better price. There is a storyline which involves Rusty, his 10 children, and his wife, who he is separated from.
Let's unpack that.
Yes, let's talk about this for a second. Rusty is a downtrodden,
Uh-huh.
beleaguered kind of a loser who is possibly going through a divorce. I haven't gotten far enough in to really figure out what the deal is with his marriage.
Fathered 10 children.
Father of 10 children, and he is
So why do
real
you get the
sad
sense that they're separated?
because he said they're separated. He straight up said, "I am separated from my wife." That is a line in this free-to-play baseball game.
It Does he seem upset about it, or are you just projecting that he's sad about it?
No, he's bummed. He is super bummed, and he is down. Like he is in the hole for a bunch of money because he bought all these baseball video games from a company called Nintendo, and he's got to sell them. So he's trying to sell them to you. And the way that you haggle with him is not just by trying to say, "Oh, I want a better price." You have to listen to his stories about what's going on in his life.
Okay, wait. So Broke Monkey in the chat makes a good point. He says, does that mean he's a 422 human-year-old dog?
No, no, no. He's 56 in human years. He's like 8 years old in dog years.
Okay, all right.
They specifically call that out.
Alex, dude, what is Nintendo doing? What designer wrote this, and is he just projecting his real life into this?
I don't know. It's like he's like an Animal Crossing character that would have been rejected because the designer who came up with him was going through some shit. Like, it is weirdly specific in its depressingness, and I kind of love it because it's so unlike other frivolous kind of fun Nintendo stuff. Like, this character, I mean, it's goofy. Like, the kids all look alike, and they constantly make jokes about that. Like, the kids can't even tell each other apart. And there's like the baseball mini games are fun. They're actually kind of fun. I downloaded a couple of them, and they're simple. They're just hitting balls and scoring points and what have you, and it's good. But this whole through line of you unpacking the weird dark history of this character who is going through a divorce, can barely feed his children, and is in the hole for like however much money from buying all these baseball video games, thinking they're going to be the next big thing, is kind of crazy. I don't remember Nintendo doing anything this specifically dark or weird in quite a while.
Are the children with him? Do you see them?
Yes. In fact, you pick one to be your buddy through the process of downloading and playing all these different games, but it doesn't really matter which one you pick because they're all kind of the same.
Like all children.
Yes, totally. It is one of the weirdest things, and I actually kind of love it. I played a bunch of it yesterday. I wanted to play it for maybe 15 minutes, then I ended up playing a lot of it.
Did you do any of the haggling? Because I think that
Yes.
the haggling is interesting because it's basically Nintendo acknowledging that downloadable content, in-app purchasing, however you want to characterize it, is something they should be engaging with, but they want to make it playful and different.
Yeah. Hold on, I just had a total brain fart. Can you repeat that question? For some reason, something just... I don't know. All right, say that one more time.
No, I refuse.
I'm not awake today. I'm sorry. My girlfriend was up all night coughing. She has like strep throat or something. I didn't really sleep much last night. I'm sorry.
Well, before I get to that, let me point out some people seem to be having some trouble with the chat. People are saying if you log out, log back in, refresh the page, you should be good to go.
Okay.
What I was asking you was about haggling.
Yes, haggling.
Keep the prices down.
So all the prices start at like $4, and you can get those down. Like I got one down to about $2, and I got another one down to like $1.90. There are things you can earn by playing the different games. Like you can get tickets you can use as discounts, and they're like 30% or 10% or just straight up like $1 off. And you can apply those at various times when Rusty isn't really looking to haggle. That said, I don't know exactly. Like, I don't know what the limit is for the haggling. Like, I don't know how far it goes down. The cheapest I've gotten one for now is $190, which is more than 50% off. So that's nothing to sneeze at.
Mm-hmm.
And the haggling mechanic really is just you clicking on dialogue trees and being like, okay, I'm going to listen to the story. Okay, I'm going to apply this item. There are other items you can give him that are story specific. Like one of the first ones you do is one of the things you earn by playing the game is you get a ticket for a cooking class, and he's talking about how he doesn't know how to cook, and he's all freaked out about how he doesn't know how to feed his children. He walks in on them, and they have set the kitchen on fire, and he doesn't know what to do. So you had like 3 times I had to give him this ticket because he was too proud, and he was like, "No, I don't want to. I'm a baseball player. Damn it, I'm not a cook. I can't do this." And then you give it to him eventually, and he's like, "Okay, finally, I will learn to make macaroni and cheese just like it is out of the box." Yeah. Yeah.
The games are good?
I don't know. I've only played 2 of them so far, and they're pretty simple. It's just like, they're mostly just timing based. Hit the ball at a specific time or try to aim the ball at a specific thing. I don't know exactly how many mini games there are. I haven't looked to see what they all are. But the first couple I played, I actually really kind of liked. I think it's simple, dumb fun. It's just mini games, but as a free to play game that you could probably end up spending no more than, I don't know, I'm guessing like $10 or $12. If you do all the haggling, it seems like it's probably worthwhile, especially if you like anything related to baseball.
The chat is saying that other people who have played, the lowest they've been able to get it is $1. There seems to be a consensus that that's the lowest you can haggle Rusty down to.
Yeah, so that sounds about right. And the thing is, there is like a cutoff, I think, as far as like how far he is willing to go after you you haggle through. Like once he hits his moment of like, no, this is the best price I can offer you, then you're kind of locked in at that point. But that seems to vary depending on the situation and what you give him and what you end up with. So
the real deal seems to be that life is real rough.
The real deal is that, we all end up sad and alone eventually.
With
So,
10 kids.
yeah, with 10 kids who you can't tell the difference between. So, that's the real sad stuff. I Some people in the chat are saying it's not really that dark. You know what? Fine. Yes, it's not like it's Requiem for a Dream or something. It's not like Nintendo has suddenly gone full dark on us. But compared to most stuff Nintendo does, having a character talking about his separation from his wife and kind of seeing like very, very depressed, that's not something you get very often. I'm just saying.
That is bizarre in all of the greatest ways. I am so
Yeah.
excited this exists. The first thing I do after this show is charge my 3DS and download that because
Do it.
I need to see it for myself. I need to have a better sense of what the hell this is. But
That it
it
is a
sounds interesting.
worthwhile game makes it more worth it. Like it is actually fun to play, and I kind of dug it even as someone who doesn't watch baseball anymore. Like the games are simple in the way that they should be, and it seems like I think you might actually have some fun with it.
I like Blue Venom 07. I imagine a sequence where you're just crying over the TV guide and you have to figure out what to watch.
Oh, God. He's the closest thing to like a George Costanza character I have seen in a Nintendo game in a very long time. It's pretty rough.
Uh,
Uh,
anything else you've been playing this week?
yeah, I also played the new FTL. I not
Right.
on iPad. I just got the update for the PC version. I've been playing the new advanced content in that, which I think I might do a quick look solo for early next week because I don't imagine anyone else is going to, and some of those changes are pretty substantial.
Yeah, I feel like maybe now is the time to maybe jump on that train. I've never really played FTL. I played maybe all of 20 minutes, like
Yeah.
right before we did Game of the Year discussions, because Ryan was real hot on that game. So, oftentimes if someone is really into a game, we'll like, hey, everyone at least boot it up so you know what the game kind of is like. I just
Yeah.
never really had time for it. Nothing against it, even though I constantly get people telling me, hey, you're in my game, because there's a character named Scoops. That's not me. But
Yeah, there is a character named Scoops. That's true.
that is Steve Gaynor. He paid money to have his name in there, but they couldn't fit Hot Scoops, so they put Scoops. But I like the fact that everyone confuses it with me because it gets him angry as well.
That's pretty great.
It is pretty great.
The update, I will say, is really, really great. It is free if you've already bought the game, and then if you buy the iPad version, it comes with all that stuff as well. It adds a new race. It adds a new ship type that's available at the default, and it makes a ton of just like little changes, technology changes to the ships, progression changes in the story, like different events you can encounter. Because it's a randomized event type game, where whatever path you take, you never quite know what you're going to pop, or run into. And yeah, it's I like nearly all the changes they made. All the new tech seems really cool. The mind control thing kind of made me want to kill myself a couple of times. But everything else, like it's rare that you see a game overhaul itself that much for free following a release, and I'm pretty damn impressed with what they've actually done with that stuff.
And apparently the iPad version is supposed to be fantastic. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking about picking that up because, well, I'm going to Boston next week, so I'll be
Right.
on flights and things like that. So that seems like a primo time to potentially put some time in with that. I also have Bravely Default that I think I might boot up as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like FTL is probably a game I would like quite a bit. I just never committed the time to it.
Yeah, it helps, it's one of those games that you need to play at least a few times through to really get into a rhythm with it. Like the first couple of times I had no idea what I was doing. I died really quickly and I just kind of got frustrated with it. But once I finally kind of locked into learning how to attack ships, what scenarios that I should be engaging with versus just being like, nope, just going to walk away now. That helped a lot, just kind of getting a feel for that stuff. And some of the changes they've made actually alleviate some of the stress of that stuff. Like there's now a cloning chamber, so if one of your crew members dies, you can get that person back. Their skill level like decreases a little bit, but they're back on the ship. And that was one of the things that used to drive me crazy about the original version was just that you would lose crew members, and then it would be hard to sort of maintain the balance on the ship. But now that you can bring those people back, that takes some of the sting out of that.
My understanding, I heard this strategy from a lot of folks, was that they played the game on easy to get a sense of the progression, and then played it on normal because then the game's not quite a pushover.
Yeah, that's what I did. I've started playing on normal, though I went back to easy as soon as I downloaded the update, just so I could kind of try everything out with the new stuff and just get a feel for it. But I mean, the game's not impossible by any stretch on normal. Once you get a good handle on it, you can make it work. But I mean, honestly, I have beaten that game exactly once.
So you have beaten the boss, because there's a lot of talk in the chat of people saying one of my favorite games of all time. Never beaten the boss.
I beat the boss one time. And that was after well over 100 hours of playing that game.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it took a long time for me to figure out how to finally beat that boss, because it's just there's so many different variables that can inevitably fuck you in the end if you're not careful. And I finally found a combination of technologies and crew and ship and everything that got me there, and that was a deeply satisfying moment, I must say.
Interesting. Well, I'll have to download that and give that a shot. I got all this Amazon credit, but you can't use that to buy iTunes credit.
No, you can't.
It's infuriating. So whatever, I'll pick that up. I also downloaded a copy of. You seen this game Monument Valley?
I have. I don't know much about it, but I watched that trailer and I'm like, I want to play that.
Yeah.
What is that game all about?
I don't know. I haven't played it yet either. I downloaded it just before we turn this on. I'm gonna check it out this weekend. I need stuff that's tonally completely different from the game that I've been obsessed with for the last 2.5 weeks. Like I finished Dark Souls 2 this week on the same night as Vinny. Oddly enough, he has a child, so it took him a lot longer, even though he had the game early, to get to that point. But for whatever reason, we actually both finished the game on the same night. And I think I don't know what my in-game clock was, because I left the game on sometimes when I had to go walk my dog and things like that. So it's probably slightly inaccurate. But I finished it somewhere around 55 to 60 or 50 to 55 hours.
Right.
And I am glad to have Dark Souls 2 out of my life. I am sad to have Dark Souls 2 out of my life. I did really enjoy it. I don't think it was as good as Dark Souls. I don't think it's as good as that original game. I've never played Demon Souls, so I can't use that as any point of comparison. But yeah, Dark Souls 2, deeply, deeply satisfying in some different ways. The way they kind of changed the world to make it more hub-like, but putting gates along the way so that you kind of come back to those moments once you've explored another path that is perhaps a little bit easier for the kind of character you have. Yeah, just tremendously. There's nothing else like it. The moment you're talking about, an FTL where you spend 100 hours figuring out, just the right combination of things. In Dark Souls, that's basically the dexterity of your fingers to do the things that you want them to do after spending X amount of time against a boss that you've been banging your head against for 90 minutes or so. And unfortunately, Dark Souls 2 has I think a really disappointing ending. I'm not going to get into any of that. People are waiting for the PC version. Maybe Vinny and I will hop on Skype and chat about that a little bit for folks who have already finished the game. Yeah, but it tremendously enjoyable, and like I said, there's really nothing else like it. And people who are waiting for the PC version, I think you will be happy with Dark Souls 2. It just wasn't as revelatory and enjoyable as Dark Souls was, but maybe part of that is the novelty factor of having played Dark Souls first, not to mention I played it earlier this year as opposed to waiting several years for a sequel, as the traditional build-up would have gone for people who were already fans of the series. But still a ton of fun, and I think I'm going to... I don't know if I'll play the PC version right away, but I'm planning to play that, because I have to know what it looks like to see if they re-implement some of the lighting and stuff that they took out of the console version kind of at the last second to get the frame rate stabilized. Yeah. And I've never played Dark Souls as anything but a sword and shield character. So when you play that kind of character, you can basically just get right up on bosses and they whack you, and then you whack them back. A lot of that strategy is basically running around enemies to get behind them. which is not what you can do if, like, you, for example, play a magic character.
Right.
At that point, you can't get near bosses, and you need to be distanced and throwing spells. And I've never even touched magic in that series. Like, if you go brute force, you never need to interact with magic, despite magic being like a whole other set of systems. So
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna try that out on the PC version. And folks kept asking me to stream Dark Souls 2, but I specifically decided not to because I wanted a truer experience of like just being in that world by myself. But now that I've done it once, like I don't mind streaming that. So we'll probably do a little bit of that for Dark Souls 2 on the PC.
But now, have you tried any of Monument Valley at this point, or have you just downloaded it?
No,
Okay.
I just downloaded it.
Okay.
So I can probably talk about that on Monday. But all I was trying to do this week was I finally saw the end game for Dark Souls 2 in sight, and so I've just kept on that. I was like, I want to checkbox Dark Souls 2. I want to say I beat it. I want to move on from that because once you've got like 45 hours in, it's just like, God, you've put so much time into this. So I did see it through, and a big weight is off my back because every other game that I didn't play as a result of playing Dark Souls 2 take me a fraction of the time to finish.
That's fair, yes. Especially something like, say, Infamous, which will probably take you, I'm guessing, about a dozen hours total.
I'm looking forward to trying out Infamous. That's probably what I'll pick up as my primary game after PAX. Doesn't Shovel Knight come out like real soon?
Soon, yeah. I don't know what the exact date is, but they said like early-ish April. I'm guessing probably like next week sometime. And then the new Wolf Among Us episode is out early next week. Playing through FTL, just by the way, like a game takes about an hour. Okay. So it will not take you assuming you don't die, halfway through the progression, getting through the whole thing probably takes about an hour. So that's not a huge time suck.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's really all I played. I played a tiny bit more of BioShock Infinite Burial at Sea, but nothing to add anything to what I mentioned on Monday. I'm hoping to finish that off this weekend, and then at least I could talk vaguely about how that story ends, because I've heard so much about it. Definitely appear, they seem to be doing some retconning in part 2. That seems to be a little bit of what I'm picking up on as we're going along. But retconning can be interesting. It's not always done just to sweep mistakes under the rug. If you're retconning with a purpose, not to mention BioShock Infinite deals with alternate realities and all sorts of stuff that retconning is part and parcel for stories that engage with that sort of narrative trick. So exactly how that works, I'm curious to see, but I don't know quite yet.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, other than that was kind of all I played this week.
There's a lot of news.
There was some news.
I filed a big story. We can talk about threes a little bit and kind of get that out of the way. So I wrote this big story. Went up yesterday called "Meet the Clones," in which the game Threes, which is a iOS and Android and I guess web if you count the clones, puzzler in which, in very basic terms, you slide numbers over one another to add up to bigger numbers, and you try and do that for as long as you can to achieve the biggest number possible, which then results in a score. And so the story I put up was about how there have been a lot of clones of that game very quickly, and rather than just talking specifically about the fact that clones happen, because that's not a new thing, it's not a new phenomenon for games, that's been happening since the dawn of games, but more so was talking to the people who made those clones and trying to get a sense of like what motivated them to do that. Like, was it purely, I'm just trying to cash in and get my money based off of this cool popular concept, as a lot of people try to do with Flappy Bird, or is it a little more complex than that? And if you read my story, then you realize pretty quickly that it is a little more complex than just people going to cash in their chips.
Though there certainly does seem like there are those people who are doing that, but those are probably the people who didn't necessarily respond to your request for comment. It seemed like the people who did respond, at the very least, believed that they had less nefarious purposes in mind when they were creating these things. Like one guy said that he made the game just because he wanted to for like it was his girlfriend or his fiance or something. It sounds like in a lot of cases, or at least the people you talk to, those were the people who at least believed in their hearts that they were not necessarily doing something super wrong. In the case of the guy that you tracked down, who seemed to be making the most money off the ads version of 2048, that guy, looking at the research you did and looking at the stuff that guy makes, seems like that is very much his bag of just making money off other people's ideas.
Yeah, like the guy who made 1024, which is widely considered to be sort of like the beginning of the clone saga. And I should, point out like one thing I don't completely unpack in the story, but that there's a much wider discussion to be had is like the term clone is sort of, it's a problem word because like in its most technical definition, a clone is an exact copy, and that's not what we're talking about here. Like neither 1024 or 2048 are exact clones of threes. They,
right.
in some ways, change the mechanics on some level. They have different visuals, so they're not a one-to-one clone as we tend to use that term, but we use that term in the sense that, well, it's highly, highly derivative, could not exist without the thing that came before it, and does not necessarily make meaningful changes to that formula. And that's obviously subjective. So that's why I wanted to talk to those people, because I feel like whatever the term clone means is probably different to different people. Like like you said, the 1024 guy made it for his fiance and then said, well, I'm just going to release it, and seems maybe slightly ignorant of what we're talking about in terms of a clone and the consequences. And the guy made 2048, the popular web version, he was just at a coding experiment over the weekend, and by making it open source, he thought he was doing the right thing, and you can see why he would arrive at that conclusion.
Sure. Yeah, it's not it's not a nonsensical thought line to have. When you think that you're just taking an idea and making it free for everyone, but and there are people who unfortunately suffer for those decisions, especially people who like say made threes.
Yeah, and so it's super complex. There's like so much that goes into it, like especially because these days the ease at which you can make games allows these simpler games, and I don't use that as derogatory, because if you look at that huge letter chain that the Threes developers published, an incredible amount of work went into creating a very simple game. In fact, sometimes simple is kind of a compliment, because there's an elegance to arriving at something that's simple. But nonetheless, by being simple, it's very easy to create a easily replicable version of that. So it's not tough for someone to make a version of threes once it's already sort of the design idea has already been proven. So I recommend people checking out the article. It's a weird thing, and like you said, the Antoine Marcos, who is the guy who runs this studio called Ketchup, seems to be, if we want to assign a villain to a story like this, he downloaded the open source 2048 and then just slapped ads on it, and now it's incredibly popular on multiple marketplaces, and he provides very little credit to either 2048 or to threes, zero credit to threes. If you look at the app description of 2048, he does link to inspired by 2048, the web version, despite the fact that it plays the same, looks the same, has the exact same color palette, and most likely just uses the same code base that was published on the web. So saying inspired by when it is that is very much a clone is,
yeah.
And I don't think it's a big surprise. He's the only one who didn't get back to me.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a guy that I contacted over Facebook, Twitter, multiple email addresses. I called his phone number. I found all that information about him. At no point did he even return to acknowledge that the story was happening.
Right.
I went through several phases of contacting him of, hey, I'd just like to talk about your company. 2048 seems really popular. And then, hey, it seems like your company has some questionable business practices. Do you want to talk about them? I'm like, hey, I'm going to publish a story about you just so you know what's happening later this week. and
And
gave him ample opportunity to respond, and at no point did he choose to. And the moment that someone engages in that sort of practice, I paid $1 to send him a message on Facebook.
yikes!
Because the way the Facebook messaging, if you aren't friends with someone, it goes to an other box, like a spam box. So if you pay $1, it will show up in their main inbox.
Who are you paying that $1 to? To Facebook?
Yeah.
Wow, that I did not know was a thing. I know about the other box. I've definitely had plenty of messages end up there. I had no idea they had implemented a system where you could pay to get your message into your normal ass inbox.
Yeah, and I don't even know how it calculates it. I paid $1.03.
Wow.
103.
That is weird.
Right.
That's kind of shitty.
Giant Bomb really investing in investigative journalism.
Yeah, apparently. I told you about what happened to me on the subway this weekend, right?
Saw you. It doesn't. You should explain. Yes, I.
So yeah, I was on
remember.
the subway and I was playing threes, and the woman next to me on the subway was playing 2048. Now, I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to run over there and yell at someone for playing a game because for whatever reason. And I'm certainly not going to approach strangers on the subway. She looked at my phone, looked at what I was playing, and was like, "Oh, what's that?" So I responded, "Oh, it's this game Threes. It's a lot like the one you're playing." And she's like, "Oh, well, yeah, that's I got this game. It's really fun." And I was just like, "Oh yeah, no, Threes came first. It's like a $2 game or whatever." But the 2048 kind of is sort of a rip-off of this. Trying not to be real harsh about it. And the look she gave me as soon as I said the word rip-off, she just went. And I just, I actually got up and I went and sat somewhere else because I realized I had set off something I did not want to, and I left it at that. I didn't want to get scolding about it. I didn't want to be mean about it. And all it took was just the illusion that she was playing a ripoff of something else, and that was enough to apparently send her into, bug-eyed rage. And I was just like, nope, I'm done.
And that's something that I talked a little about with Greg Wowind, the co-designer of Threes, and I'm putting up our full interview on Monday in the interview dump truck so people can hear. We talked about a lot of stuff that didn't make it into the story, but that idea, that concept of consumer ignorance, I think is a really interesting one, and is a byproduct of when you have a clone of a clone of a clone of a clone. And then, in the instance of Threes, Threes did very well. I should be clear, Threes has done exceptionally well for these developers. They've made a lot of money off of it. It is not as though they are going homeless as a result of these clones. It's more just talking about the ethical questions and the broader questions about what this means for a marketplace as they become more open and these games are more easily you can duplicate them faster.
Right.
But for example, in 2048, that's the one that got written up in CNN and the Huffington Post, and there was an article on Grantland this week where they talk about 2048, and so is it anyone that isn't into games or really really into games fault for playing 2048 and not playing Threes? Absolutely not. You cannot fault them. I've told people that I met that play 2048 to hey, just so do whatever you want. If you think 2048 is a better game, do it. That's fine. It is. Yeah. You should do what you want to do. Play the games you want to play. You shouldn't have to worry about the ethical questions about the ethical minutia, because it really is getting into minutia at this point.
Yeah.
But that's what happens with this, is that these people aren't necessarily playing 2048 because they decided that 2048 was the better game. They're playing 2048 because A, it's free, and B, it's the one that is at the top of the charts in free. So that's the one they come across. If they were given the choice between 2048 and Threes, putting all money aside, would they choose Threes? I don't know. 2048 is an easier game.
Yeah.
It's not as difficult as Threes. It's less complex as Threes. It's easier to break. So there's certainly the possibility that people just like 2048 more because you can get a higher score that. That's not that crazy, but it gets into a lot of really complex questions that you saw in real life of when people play one of these derivative games.
My mistake probably was using the word ripoff, and to be fair, I was trying to be as measured as I could, but I was also sort of flustered because people on the subway don't ever talk to me, because that is the rule on the New York subway: don't talk to people unless you're with them. So I just kind of blurted that out without really thinking, and if I offended that woman, I am terribly sorry. But you should fucking play threes, lady. Come on.
It is one of those things, though, that it's kind of easy to get up in arms about, because like you see it and you're just like, God damn it, like support the thing that these people spent a year making, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I talked about with Greg, who co-made Threes, was that original sourcing in the internet age is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Like just in general, like games, whatever. It's just finding the original source for something is very difficult. Like if you just do a Google search, you're going to get the most relevant result, not necessarily a timeline that leads you to that result, if that makes any sense. So
yeah.
Finding where something started, the internet makes that really, really difficult. I think Greg compared the internet to a hypercube in that sense. And that you can look all around it trying to find the side that you're looking for, and you might just never find it.
Yeah, fair enough. What other news happened this week, man?
Nothing else.
Nothing of note ever happened, ever.
All that matters are the stories that I file, that I spent hours putting together, and everything else is relevant. I don't care what Amy Hennig did.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about it anyway. I'm sorry that you don't care about it. We're going to talk about what happened to Amy Hennig.
I guess we can talk about what you care about.
Fair enough. Amy Hennig has a new job in the game industry, and it's actually with the company she started with at EA. She is now working at Visceral Games on their new Star Wars project, which we know absolutely nothing about yet.
Yeah, this is not Battlefront. That's being made by DICE.
Yep.
That's the only one that was announced.
And it's not the BioWare game, which we don't know anything about either.
Right. Yeah, what? When I was about to publish my Threes story, you had finished editing it, and I was like, cool, like ready to go, and then and Amy is now dominating the news. I need to probably wait 45 minutes.
Yeah. give it a little breathing room. But I don't know.
What's your take on this?
My take on it is, initially the first thing that popped into my head was like, well, that sounds like just about the least interesting choice she could have made. Then I saw her tweet on the subject, which was her talking about her previous gig at EA, her having a long-time friendship with Steve Papoutsis, who is the studio head there. And
Papoutsis are delicious.
Yeah, sure. Yes, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying that Papoutsis are delicious, and that's all that I think of when I see.
Okay.
Him.
All right, fair enough. And she talked, on Twitter about how Star Wars was like a seminal franchise for her, like something that, inspired her creatively, when it first came out, and something that she's always kind of wanted to work on. And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, well, of course she takes this job, because it's like a dream project for her. She's always, it's something that is near and dear to her heart. She is going to be the creative director on this project, which means she will have a fair amount of say in where it goes. And the one sort of encouraging thing about all of this is that EA has repeatedly said over and over again that none of these games are tie-in games to the upcoming J.J. Abrams movies. They're not just straight-up movie-licensed games. They are different Star Wars games that take place in the general vicinity of those movies, but they are not just based on the films, which means that she will probably have some creative leeway to do what she wants with that stuff. And that, you know what? Amy Hennig actually having the opportunity to make a Star Wars game that she wants to make sounds way more interesting to me than just Visceral Games makes a Star Wars game. Like, put that talent with that franchise, you have my interest at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can, look at Uncharted, and certainly Nathan Drake is inspired by Han Solo. There's the everyman, the sort of the swagger, gets the girls, kind of a jerk, is affable. Like, there's a lot of, that's just sort of a cultural sort of context for what Han Solo sort of created and became a very common archetype as a result of that character specifically and how Harrison Ford played him. But it seems like a lot of the universes, especially with Uncharted, if you go back to like Legacy of Kain, less so, but with Uncharted specifically, the sort of serious but not serious, like tonal sort of play that the Uncharted series has is a perfect analog for Star Wars.
Serious drama with a sarcastic hero.
Yeah, and you have to imagine that's probably the route they would be going. Who knows? We know nothing about this project. Have no idea how far along it is. Have no idea, is she going to come in, and as a result of coming in, going to have a big influence on the direction of that, or not super sure where things like that are headed. I have to imagine that there's going to be a lot of Star Wars news in the next 3 months, because the new movie starts filming next month. E3 is in June. My guess is I wouldn't be surprised if we got at least a title and Amy on stage at the EA press conference at E3 to talk a little bit about what they're up to, even if it's not necessarily a title or anything more than just, we're working on a Star Wars game. Here's kind of the the tone that we're going for, and she talks about her love of Star Wars and stuff like that. But it's absolutely the last thing I would have thought of. Would not have even been in my top 20 guesses, and yet makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, it does. The one thing I will say is that when they first announced that deal, they said that those games were very much in the beginning conceptual stages. So at this point in history, I have to imagine they have a concept for a game. Maybe they have a loose story idea sort of mapped out, but they're a long ways away, it sounds like. I think Battlefront is probably the first. If I recall correctly, was the first one they were targeting for release. So it seems like if she's not coming in at the absolute natal stage of that game, she's coming in early enough to where her influence should be, very much felt in all aspects of that product. Again, this is guesswork, but this is just based on the timing that EA has announced thus far for those games. So here's hoping. I have a lot of faith in her as a writer and a creative lead. I think that, given the fact that she does hold such reverence for the franchise and that she does have the talent that she has, I don't get excited for Star Wars games anymore, but if nothing else, this has made me, at the very least, very interested in how this game turns out, because nothing would please me more than to actually have a Star Wars game that was worth caring about again.
Yeah, I love Star Wars, but I stopped caring about Star Wars as a gaming franchise a long time ago. I'm with you. If one comes out and it's great, like a Knights of the Old Republic, fantastic. But I got off the the hype train a long time ago because it's just nothing but hurt. And I have to admit I'm a little disappointed that she's not working on something completely original. Not that what she works on in Star Wars can't be original in its own right, and blah 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 and all those caveats. But I'm excited to see what she is a part of. Less so, excited about what that means for Star Wars or the fact that it's Star Wars. Right. I'm curious to see what she does. It seems to fit within her sensibilities of the kinds of games she wants to make these days, which are big AAA, motion capture, and a Star Wars game. EA is going to get really behind in a big way. So if she was to start her own studio, whether she'd be able to do that from day one, maybe not necessarily the case. And so it sounds like maybe she tried to find a middle ground of where is something you can go and use a lot of the talent she has refined over the last 10 years of making Uncharted games, and still do something a little bit original. And I'll say this: I'm more excited that she's working on a new Star Wars game that I know nothing about and will probably have original characters and settings than Uncharted 4, which I'm sure will be fine, but I didn't really need another one of those.
Yeah, but that will come anyway. So
so now we're getting both.
Yeah, and that sounds great to me. Other than that, I think the only other big thing that happened this week was the Amazon announcement of the Fire TV. It's all-purpose streaming device, which will have apps for days, son, including some game stuff with a really shitty controller, and also the additions of Kim Swift and Clit Hawking to the Amazon Game Studios brand. Patrick, you were the one who reported on this. What do you think about this whole Fire TV thing? Did you run out and buy one immediately, or what?
No, I mean we talked a little bit this about on IM. Like the
Yeah.
games right now are not a compelling purchase for me. You know, if they're hiring folks like Kim Swift and Clint Hawking, and they purchased Double Helix, it's not hard for me to imagine at some point, $99 is kind of within impulse range when there's something pretty neat on the horizon. And
Yeah.
I think I want to say I saw that the Fire TV is compatible with other Bluetooth controllers. So
Right.
like I think there's a way to imagine that someone could get a PlayStation 4 controller up and running on that somehow. I'm no tech wizard, but that
Right.
seems like something the internet could solve for me instead of using what appears to be a complete garbage controller. It sounds like the D-pad is terrible and it does not feel good in your hands. But they've described games as a bonus as opposed to a focus, which
Right.
makes sense for their initial announcement because right across the shot across the bow that they're taking is at Roku, Apple TV, these tiny, cheap set-top boxes that, as a result of mobile parts becoming cheaper and smaller, can now allow them to do a lot more than what they did before. And that means, some games. Some of the games that Amazon Game Studios showed looked interesting. It's hard to get a sense of if those are going to be any good. They're an unproven studio, largely. But I like Double Helix. I like Kim Swift. I like Clint Hawking. Although Clint Hawking left Ubisoft and then went to Valve. I don't know what he worked on at Valve. He didn't ship a product while he was there, and then now is at Amazon, so he's sticking in the Seattle area. What that means to those developers, I don't know. I'm cautiously interested.
Right.
But even if Amazon's messaging out of this initial event was, hey, games are a bonus, they're investing a lot of money in something that they're just calling a bonus.
Yeah. It sounds like an interesting device, and I don't own any of those boxes at this point. I don't own a Roku. I don't own an Apple TV or anything. Though honestly, after the conversation you and I had about the Apple TV and the whole putting YouTube stuff from my iPad on my TV and the relative ease with which that works, maybe I'll actually finally buy one of those things. I don't know.
Clicking a button and being able to have your music and video show up effortlessly on your TV and nice sound setup that was worth $100.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah, for how many years I've gone being willfully ignorant of the Apple TV, wouldn't it be funny if the announcement of the Fire TV was what got me to buy an Apple TV? But I don't foresee myself buying one of those things anytime soon. I'm curious to see what they do with the game stuff, but like you said, it's an afterthought at this point, and it will become a bigger part of it perhaps down the road, but right now it's just, here is this box in which we would like to make you watch all your app stuff and all these Amazon streaming original series. Like alphas and
what's the one that Chris
some
Carter
other
of
stuff.
X-Files, the After?
Oh yeah, I don't know. I honestly I am so out of the loop on what actual Amazon shows are. I just remember alphas because I think that had John Goodman in it.
I think so. I don't know. I've not watched. I think it's interesting what they do where they release all of the pilots and allow you to watch all of them, and then they choose, a selection of those to go to a full
series.
season production. It's a series, yeah. I think it's interesting. I've never heard enough acclaim for any of the Amazon series to want to check any of them out. And I also think while that shotgun approach is interesting, it also makes it so when I look at a list of 30 shows, tell me the one to watch, right?
Yeah.
House of Cards is okay, House of Cards.
Right.
I'll watch an episode, and if I like it, then I'll stick with it.
I have still watched no House of Cards at this point, so maybe one day.
So I don't know.
that
Amazon's gonna be interesting. I don't know. We'll see. That's it's too early to tell. If I had to make a guess, Jeff Gerstmann seems like the kind of guy that would just buy one of those.
Oh yeah.
And yell at it.
Jeff Gerstmann buys things.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know what he's going to do with them, but he buys things when they come out because that's just what Jeff Gerstmann does.
Yeah.
Should we talk a little bit before we take some user questions here in the chat? Feel free to send those to us via the @replies and what have you. About this game jam nonsense that took place early in the week.
Yeah, for people that aren't aware, there was a game jam reality show, I think Game_Jam,
Yes.
in which a selection of a who's who of independent game designers, Zoe Quinn of Depression Quest, Davey Rendon of Stanley Parable, a selection of others whose names are escaping me right now. Anyway, a bunch of them were invited to be part of a reality show where I think Kelly Santiago of That Game Company and formerly of That Game Company and some others were going to like judge and host, and the idea was to try and take a bunch of really talented folks and show this game jam process in a way that is a little more digestible to a mass audience.
Yes.
And this was coming from, was it Pulse? Is that what they're called? No, Polaris.
Polaris.
Polaris was this company that Disney just bought.
And Maker Media, I guess.
Yeah, and that was the pitch. Was like, look, you're gonna have to do some weird things in order to sort of underwrite this. Mountain Dew was sponsoring it, so they kind of had to like drink Mountain Dew or pretend they were drinking Mountain Dew. Like a lot of caveats were in place that for a lot of these folks is probably made them feel uncomfortable. But if you read sort of the reporting and the way they've described about it, they thought the larger goal of showcasing game development as it really is was worth those compromises because it seemed like the people involved had that intention. They wanted to show what it was like to make a game and find a way to do that for a larger audience. But if you read, there's a large report up on Indie Static. There are a bunch of blog posts from various people who were involved. Zoe Quinn signed her contract, so she had to kind of talk in very oblique terms about her experience. But anyone that's watched a reality show or read any writing about how reality shows work probably wouldn't be surprised to learn kind of how it all went wrong. In broad terms, they tried to eke drama out of people, trying to fake fights or push people into corners to talk shit about their teammates. They made a lot of really disgusting remarks about the women that were on the various teams and whether that was an advantage or whether the girls were pretty. And it was just disgusting all around, and really seems to coalesce around one individual in particular whose name I don't have in front of me, but is mentioned predominantly throughout these various reports. But
Matty Lesham is his name.
Yeah, he's got an interesting Twitter feed.
Yes, he does.
He
is a brand person. He is in love with brands. He likes to make brands better. He wants to have sex with brands. That is what I'm able to gather from reading his Twitter feed.
Yeah, and apparently he had posted like photos from behind the scenes of the jam as it was being filmed, and then deleted those. So I think he may be aware of how that stuff went. But there hasn't been any, as far as I know, official comment from the folks involved. But the reason this fell apart, the reason Game Jam will probably never air, is because rather than sticking it through, a percentage of these designers walked off and just said, "F it, we're done. Like, this is disgusting. Goes against our morals, our ethics," and decided to just basically crash the production. And in the days since, there's been crazy things that have come out about, Rami of Lambier, talked a little bit about the contracts they were asked to sign because they kind of had Rami look at them before they flew out there. And there was crazy things like if you were within 250 miles of wherever promotion might be happening for the Game Jam once it was finished being edited and they were kind of shopping it around, you'd have to travel there yourself, and they would only fly people in if you were more than 250 miles away. And like these are independent game designers. Not all of them are the millionaires that there are of very few out there. A lot of these people are making these games because they're just scraping by. They're doing it for the love of it, and it's just completely, I don't know. It was crazy. It didn't surprise me in the broader sense of what happens in reality TV. Yeah. But to read it in such specific terms with people that I know was still pretty shocking.
Yeah, I mean, you read that Indie Static story that was sort of like the first big breaking point for this news. It sounds like, at the very least, at the outset, this event sounded like a good idea. It sounded like the people who were making it and putting it together had the right idea in mind of taking this idea, this independent game development, and finding a way to make it, sort of demystifying it through this medium to people. I have to imagine it had to have sounded good because people like Zoe would not have signed on if it sounded super shitty up front. So, the really crazy thing about this is it seems like it just went so far off the rails, like right in the middle of the whole production process. And, Jeff commented on Twitter, there is a way to do this, to take the idea of a game jam and make it, entertainment, make it fun, make it watchable for people on the internet. But, to see how this went from this kind of like basically good idea into this complete shit show where people are storming off is a pretty astounding turnaround over the course of just a couple of days. And the fact that one guy seems to have been so much the catalyst for all this drama, he manufactured drama. He did it. He managed to manufacture drama, just not at all the kind of drama that he was trying to manufacture out of what that show was. He ended up becoming the drama, and that is sort of the sad reality when you bring people like that into a space with people who are not accustomed to dealing with Hollywood assholes. It just does not go well.
Yeah, the drama's supposed to be about the people in front of the camera, not the guys behind it. But It seems like, if you've read read up on reality TV, these kinds of people are more common than you think.
I worked on a reality show briefly once when I was working at Rock Band stuff. We did a thing called, I think, Rock Band to the Stars. It was a competition show that I was already in LA for something else, and so I and one of the MTV production people had to sit in on this Mark Burnett produced competition reality show where people played Rock Band songs on a big stage with a fake audience that was brought in from central casting. And it was, it was nowhere near as gross as any of this stuff. Like, nobody was trying to position, Mountain Dew cans or whatever. But it was definitely like, we are trying to figure out what kind of personality stereotypes we can fit these band groups into. We're trying to figure out a way to manufacture the maximum amount of competition drama out of people playing what is basically amounts to a rock and roll karaoke game. A lot of that stuff. It was a very uncomfortable, weird thing to be a part of, especially considering a lot of these people who were in it were just, kids who like to play Rock Band that, signed up for this competition, didn't really know what they were getting involved in. Thankfully, I never had to be on camera or anything. I just had to set up the instruments and make sure that, everything worked properly. But watching that unfold gave me a really weird perspective on how this whole reality TV thing works.
Yeah, because it's often not just capturing reality, and any sort of editing is even the writing that I do, like my 3 story, like there is inherent subjectivity to it, like the idea that you can be or even just strive to be objective, I think, is a falsehood. I think you just try and present the truth as you see it, and there is subjectivity in that, and you see that come up in Indie Game the movie, for example. Like they make creative choices to tell the stories they want to tell. It's not just a raw footage dump. And the moment, it's just that what happens in some of these reality TV shows, what we saw with, Game Jam, the proposed reality show, is when it's not just, making creative or editing choices, like it goes far beyond that in terms of trying to control, how everything plays out.
Yeah. So, if you haven't read that Indie Static story, you definitely should. There are also multiple blog posts from the people who were involved in that whole thing with some really interesting perspectives on all of it. I definitely recommend checking all of that out. And, it sounds like, if nothing else, some of the people involved in that are going to make their own game jam type thing. Whether that turns out to be something that is streamed or not, I don't know. But, if nothing else, if hopefully this just inspires people to do something good like that, and pretend that thing just never ever happened, because holy shit.
Yeah, Zoe has made allusions to something called Rebel Jam, and it sounds like there are maybe some plans in the works to take what could have been something cool that went horrible and maybe try and do something with it. So hopefully that happens. That sounds like that could be something real neat.
Yeah.
Let's answer a couple of questions before we close. So people are asking, right, so this is Chicago on Professional Friday.
Yes.
Which is up on the site now. So it is not taking the place of Unprofessional Fridays in San Francisco. I
Goddamn.
can't even get close to guaranteeing it's going to happen every Friday or on Fridays in the future. But what I can say is that the long-term plan is to have a Friday show that is sort of a lead-in to the San Francisco show, and that involves some of the long-term plans I have with Max in terms of cards and office and studios and stuff like that. That isn't worth getting into because the plans are not concrete yet. But Dave Lang does have a studio, and when we were at GDC, we talked about trying to get together once a week to do something fun together. We like hanging out with each other. We make each other laugh, and it's fun to do stuff together. And that's certainly a huge part of Giant Bomb that part of you lost when you moved to New York, and part of what I've lost in moving to the Midwest. And so it's like, okay, I have an opportunity to try and do something like that with some folks I really like, and whether that's just me, Max, and Dave all the time, like probably not. Like I'd love to get some more folks in Chicago involved, whether those are game developers, people just interested in games, or other games writers, of which there are quite a few in Chicago. I don't quite know yet. I'm not completely sure what that show is even yet. I just thought, hell, let's just do it, and we'll figure out what it's going to be later.
On a scale of normal to GDC, how drunk is Dave Lang going to be during this?
Probably normal. As
Normal
normal
drunk.
as normal drunk as Dave Lang could be. It's in the middle of the day, and right after we finish, they have to pack things up to go to PAX East. So
Right.
I think things may be relatively under control, but the plan is to kind of take the model of Unprofessional Friday of bringing something to the table and checking it out. I kind of like the idea that maybe some weeks we'll bring stuff that you force other people to play as opposed to playing it yourself. I think that could be kind of fun. But Unprofessional Friday is a ton of fun, and I miss doing it. And so I decided to make my own clone of Unprofessional Friday. And
Very nice. Very nice. Way to tie it all together.
Here in Chicago. But there will still be one in San Francisco, as there is every week, and I'm not sure, again, how regular this is going to be. It might take place at different times during the week. Other people have different schedules, and so it's kind of based on that. But obviously, watch it. Let us know how much more you want Dave to drink over the course of the next show. But it should be a lot of fun. I'm excited for it. I don't know what game I'm going to bring, so if you have any suggestions, make sure and yell at me on Twitter or send me a PM. I haven't decided on what game I should bring there just yet, but it should be a lot of fun, and I'm hoping we can try and do it every week, or at least every other week, until I've got a little studio space of my own to have a little more control over the scheduling of that. But it should be fun. It should be real dumb.
Totally. And Christopher asked, when is Unprofessional Fridays in New York going to start? When it's not just me sitting in a goddamn room talking to myself. That's when.
It's just Alex.
It's just me doing this for an hour.
Uh-huh.
Because that's every Friday for me.
So yeah, let's see. Let's pull up another. That's Unprofessional Friday Chicago. Vinny and I spent 15 minutes trying to come up with other names. Let's say it's mostly Vinny spent 15 minutes coming up with names. I will share those on the stream. Some of them they're interesting.
Yeah, okay.
Interesting ideas. Interesting ideas. Let's see. People asking about the Game Jam. People asking about Soma being underwater instead of space. I think it's funny that Thomas Grip, the designer of Amnesia and the upcoming Soma, lied to my face for an entire hour-long interview about that game being in space, despite the fact that he knew the entire time it was set underwater.
Wow. So, okay, I had not picked up on that news. It is now set underwater, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the trailer that went out yesterday that reveals that is the true nature of what's happening in that game. And so I played that at GDC. I can talk about that maybe next week when we have at least one morning show. We won't have the Friday show because we'll be in Boston, but I can chat about that. And I'll have an interview with Thomas Grip going up on the site at some point. Well, let's end with this. What do you think about WrestleMania?
What do I think about WrestleMania? Well, you can hear my extended thoughts about WrestleMania on the Power Bombcast, which will be going up in a couple of hours, provided you are a premium member. But for the free members who just want to hear my basic thoughts, I am very much looking forward to it. I think it's going to be fun. The build up they have done for this year's show has been sporadically good. Some of it has been really bad, as most wrestling tends to be, but the main event stuff has gotten way more interesting over the last couple weeks, and I think it's going to be a fun show. Don't worry, I will probably yell about it all sorts on the Monday shows, because it's not like there's going to be a whole lot of game news to talk about. So, Patrick, you should watch it yourself so that we can have some time to talk about wrestling from the perspective of someone who does not watch wrestling. I think that would be fun.
When is it?
It is on Sunday night.
That sounds like it's going to interrupt Game of Thrones.
It is during Game of Thrones. I will be taping Game of Thrones and then watching that afterward.
Okay.
I don't suggest watching all the pre-show shit or anything else because it's 3 hours on its own. You add the pre-show, that's another hour. That is 4 hours of wrestling on Sunday. Don't do that.
No, that's... Wait, how much would I have to pay to indulge this experience?
Well, you could sign up for the WWE Network and watch it streaming on there for only $9.99 a month with a 6-month commitment. Or you could just pay the $60.
Wait a second, that's not $9. That's not $10.
Shush!
That's $60.
You're ruining it. Or you can just pay the $60 and watch the one show on your cable television or satellite provider.
What if I watch like YouTube clips on like Sunday night?
They're not going to be YouTube clips on Sunday night. That shit won't go up anywhere official until Monday, and when it does, it'll be, if there be a few clips on maybe WWE's YouTube channel, but most of that stuff will just be on the network and their website.
I'm not going to watch WrestleMania.
Fine, fuck you, whatever. All right, so anyway, Power Bombcast up in a few hours. In addition to that, I will also have an Encyclopedia Bombastica entry going up tomorrow for WrestleMania 2000, which is the game we will be playing at PAX East for the Sunday Royal Rumble feature panel thing that we're doing with a bunch of game developers and other people that we're all friends with. So look for that as well.
Sweet. Awesome. All right, well, Alex, I will talk to you on Monday, our last show before PAX East, because we will take that Friday off because we will be there in person.
Yes, we will.
Doing a live Giant Bomb panel, which will be streamed this year. The first year that the panel is going to be streamed live, so if you're not there, you can mistaken people saying scoops when I get introduced as people booing me, which is my favorite video comment every time the panel videos go up, is just, wow, people are really rude. Like, why would they boo him when he gets introduced? It's
amazing.
So anyway, we'll be back one more time next week. Alex, I'll talk to you on Monday.